The New Orleans Saints opened their 2024 NFL season the exact way that they needed to, with a dominating performance. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's live post-game reaction episode, the New Orleans Saints stomp a mud hole in the Carolina Panthers. You know what? We're going to break down how they did it. We'll take a look at the defense doing its thing, give you some injury updates as well. We'll dive into why, just because this is the Carolina Panthers, it doesn't mean that there's not positives to take away from an otherwise dominating performance here by the New Orleans Saints. And we're going to kick everything off with the New Orleans Saints offense looking just like everyone had hoped and almost no one believed, myself included, that the New Orleans Saints offense would look like in week one after the big offensive coordinator change this off season. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are out here. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Head over to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL so you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. It's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? Oh my goodness. Here we are standing on the floor of the Caesars Superdome. And I point that out because I thought that by the time the New Orleans Saints were done, they were going to have burned the entire floor up, because that's how good this New Orleans Saints offense looked. Let's just revel in this for a moment, if you'll entertain me with a nice little laissez-le bon temps roulette moment here, right? This New Orleans Saints team spent the offseason, their biggest acquisition being offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak. They revamped their offensive line, new starter at left guard, new starter at left tackle, new starter at right tackle, even though he's a player that was already familiar with the system. They bring in this new system. They try to elevate players like Rashid Shaheed, like Derek Carr, like Alvin Kamara, like Taysom Hill. They change these roles to make sure that these guys are doing the things that are best suited towards their skill set. They do the same for Chris Olave, who might not have been a big factor production-wise in this game, but was a major factor for the reason why so much was so open all throughout this game, because of the attention that he draws up against a zone-heavy defense like the Carolina Panthers. And what the New Orleans Saints did, regardless of who they were playing against on the other side, and I don't want to overdo this, but just bear with me for a second. Regardless of who they played against over on the other side, we got to remember, Carolina is a team that has completely embraced their situation. They've completely embraced their life cycle. They're a rebuilding team, all those other things. There's no doubt about that. But hear me out. What the New Orleans Saints did on their own accord that had nothing to do with Carolina is the thing that makes me feel so good about what we saw today. I'm going to break down some of those things here in a little bit, but I want to be clear. I'm not detracting from the New Orleans Saints' success today. I'm not going to do it. I will caveat that Carolina is Carolina, and we all know what that means. And the New Orleans Saints did something similar here this year up against the New England Patriots last year, but I'm going to tell you why that's not a big deal to me. What I want to start with, though, is Klint Kubiak, the New Orleans Saints offense, and Derek Carr. Klint Kubiak brought in this new offensive system. And one of the big question marks that we asked was, will they be ready? Like, will they be able to hit the ground running with their new offensive system week one? It was one of the reasons why I was low on the Saints coming into the season, is because I wasn't sure they were going to be able to, based on last year, pick up the new system as quickly as they needed to in order to be a 10-win team like they have the talent to be. Well, here today, they shut me up. And I'm so grateful that they did, because goodness gracious, did that look good. Now, they're going to have to prove it against the Dallas Cowboys. They're going to have to prove it against the Philadelphia Eagles next week. But let's live in today for a moment. What did the New Orleans Saints prove? They proved that they have an offensive system that works. And you can look at that offensive system, and I bet you Take that offensive system that you watch with the New Orleans Saints, go and watch a San Francisco 49ers game, go and watch a Los Angeles Rams game, go and watch a Houston Texans game, a Miami Dolphins game, and you're going to see a lot of the same things that New Orleans did during this week up against the Carolina Panthers in each and every one of those systems as well. That's the one big thing that we were asking for about the New Orleans Saints going into this season. Can you modernize your offense, i.e., can you do the things and elevate the things within your offense that are creating explosive offenses around the rest of the league? We saw all of it. Motion, play action, waggles, right? With the two fakes and then being able to dump off to the side. The fantastic 17-yard run by Alvin Kamara on the toss on 3rd and 7. Just great play calling that all made sense. The sequencing made sense. You run the outside zone run, and then you fake the outside zone run, and you bootleg over to the opposite side and find a way to go ahead and get and make that connection on the run out. All of those things were all a part of what it was that the New Orleans Saints were doing. And so what we wanted to see was a system that came in with an identity, with a DNA, and sort of with a foundation upon which this team could build. And I think we saw that today. And we saw it orchestrated very well by Derek Carr, who threw 3 touchdowns in this game. Took until week 9 last year for the Saints to find that kind of success over in the passing game on the offensive side of the football last year, and only threw for 200 yards in the process. So we're not talking about one of those big, criticisms that always gets lobbed over at Derek Carr, like, oh, it's all, late game empty yards and stuff like that. The New Orleans Saints offense scored on each of its 9 possessions in this game. That's 9 out of 11 possessions. The only 2 times that they didn't score were the 2 times that they punted at the end of the game when the reserves were in because they took all their starters out. That's the type of performance that you want. And to have that performance against any NFL team is impressive. We see a lot of games with the San Francisco 49ers, the Los Angeles Rams, the Miami Dolphins, the top offenses around the NFL. We see a lot of games from them, and very rarely do we see them score on 9 consecutive possessions, 9 of the 11 possessions by the end of a game, right? We don't see that on a weekly basis, so we have to give the New Orleans Saints credit for that. Here's the other things that I loved on the offense. Alvin Kamara, I thought looked excellent. This was his 50th game with over 100 scrimmage yards in a game. Ended up the Saints putting up a total of 100 rushing yards by the time that they were getting into the middle point of the third quarter, 161 total yards coming out of the first quarter of the game. They were absolutely outstanding in both areas. And you saw the tone set from the very beginning. Look at the very first play call. Derek Carr, before the snap comes, Taysom Hill is running from the left side to the right side. There's motion at the snap, meaning he's still moving when Derek Carr snaps the football. They snap the football. Taysom Hill gets a little bit of a lead out. They hand the ball to Alvin Kamara, a 9-yard run right at the very beginning. Then they turn around on the very next play, and then they have Taysom Hill at tailback, hand the ball to him, and go and pick up a first down. And then they went on to convert 2 of their first 3 third downs. First 3 third downs. It's a weird way to say that. But 2 of their first 3 third downs. And then convert in the red zone and do all the things that you wanted to see. We saw 5 different players score touchdowns in this game, including touchdowns to Rashid Shaheed on the big 59-yard deep pass, which immediately set the tone for where this New Orleans Saints offense was mentally. Then they turn around and they get a touchdown to Foster Moreau. They get a touchdown to Juwan Johnson at a later point. Just excellent stuff. And actually on both of those plays, the one to Foster Moreau was one to where he wasn't in the read, but Derek Carr wanted to get the ball to him because he put his hand up and was open, so he ended up hitting him. And then he ends up going back to Juwan Johnson later, who is a hot read on the scramble drill. So that was an excellent kind of way to work through the progressions and then get where they needed to go as an offense to put points on the board. So all of those things include 3 different elements, okay? 3 important elements. Number 1, a system and a scheme that worked. Number 2, execution from the player side. And number 3, individual efforts and individual performances. And those 3 things coming up next are to be what I'm going to lean on when I'm talking about why it doesn't matter that this was the Carolina Panthers. We got that coming up for you next here as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to play daily fantasy football and the only place that I go to play daily fantasy football as well, because I don't like doing the whole playing against like fake lineups or lineups that I don't know and I'm trying to compete for some percentage of a larger pie or something like that with thousands, millions of people, however many people play daily fantasy sports. I want to be able to use my football knowledge to win myself money. And that's the way that Prize Picks works. And it's that simple. Basically what it is that they give projections to each player going into a game. So on an NFL game like this, you think, you get a projection for Derek Carr, you get a projection for rushing yards for Alvin Kamara. And all you do is pick more or less. You get up to 4 of those right, you can win up to 100 times your entry back, including a free entry every week with one Caleb Williams passing yard for the Chicago Bears being an automatic win for you. So go and check them out today. Download the Prize Picks app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL so you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL over at Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you pay $5 or when you play $5. You don't even have to win in order to get that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. This show sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp Therapy, big for me, has been big for me for a long time. Therapy is something that's very important to me. It's one of my non-negotiables. I never miss it. I always want to make sure that it's a part of my week, and I always make sure to carve time out for it. And one of the things that BetterHelp has absolutely helped me out with has been effectively me figuring out the things that I want to learn. Where do I still want to find knowledge? Where do I still want to learn something new? Like, I don't want to lose that just because I'm not in my childhood age anymore. And so BetterHelp has helped me be able to kind of find those things and be able to effectively like lean in on those things and devote time to those things. So I absolutely love BetterHelp for that. And I think they could be very helpful to you as well. So if you haven't tried BetterHelp yet, go and try it out today. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon so you can get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, family. I'm going to tell you straight up, I don't care. I don't care that it was the Carolina Panthers today. I think that Saints fans should continue with me today on the Laissez-le Bon Temps Roulette, right? And feeling really good about where the New Orleans Saints are. I'm going to tell you why. I think that the Saints showed some things that are actually a part of who they are going into 2024. We appreciate you very much, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, every day. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out Locked On NFL 2 times a day now. The Madman Tyler Rowland and the Barbershop with Tony Wiggins. All that real-life NFL talk that you want to hear. No filter, none of that. Go and check it out over at Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, look, the New Orleans Saints, I'll borrow from a quote here, showed out on both sides of the ball today. And I completely agree with that. So now I want to expand our conversation. We discussed a little bit about the offense. We'll get into some deeper numbers and deep dives in tomorrow morning's episode and stuff like that for the offense. But I want to focus now on expanding our conversation from just the offense to the offense and the defense. And both sides of the football played extremely well. New Orleans Saints offense scores on its first 9 possessions of the game. They're absolutely outstanding. The New Orleans Saints defense, the defensive backs contribute three turnovers, plus some additional turnovers throughout, including, you get a special teams contribution from Jawan Johnson, who gets a punt deflection. How cool was that to see? And then you add in like 4 total sacks, 3 sacks from Alontae Taylor, the first ever defensive back in New Orleans Saints history to finish a game with 3 sacks in it. I asked him if he was going to change his position to defensive end. He said, no, I think I've changed my position enough, which is very fair. Very fair, Alontae. That's a very good answer. So the way that I look at this, when I look at the New Orleans Saints, is you saw really an all-around complete game, right? An all-around effort. Now, how do you take the excitement from what was a big win, 47-10, nearly a 50 burger? We were on 50 burger watch in this one. So how do you take that kind of a performance and all the excitement that's around all of that, and then kind of balance that with the realistic expectations of what the next game is going to be? They got the Dallas Cowboys next. Much better defense, much better team than the Carolina Panthers are. They got the Philadelphia Eagles after that. Much better defense, much better team than the Carolina Panthers. But here's why I'm not super concerned about the New Orleans Saints offense and defense just because it was the Carolina Panthers. Do I want to see them prove it against the Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles? 100% yes. Absolutely yes. There's no doubt about that. But here's why I'm not concerned. Execution from the players, play calling, and good scheme system on both sides of the football, and individual effort, individual impact plays. Here's what I mean by that. Carolina can be as bad as they want. That doesn't make Klint Kubiak sequence his plays in a way that ends up creating punches and counter punches naturally throughout the defense or naturally throughout the offense. Carolina can be as bad as they want. The New Orleans Saints don't have to use motion and play action. They didn't last year. This year, they're doing that, right? That has nothing to do with how good or bad Carolina is. That has everything to do with what is the identity, DNA, the foundation of who the New Orleans Saints are over on the offensive side of the football. It's got everything to do with New Orleans, got nothing to do with Carolina. Then you look at the execution side of it, right? The plays are called, but are the plays being executed? And I think you saw good examples of that today. I look back at the touchdown to Foster Moreau, where you had Derek Carr kind of directing traffic and kind of pointing people where he wanted them to go and everything in the red zone. Could have run it in for a touchdown, but he said, it's like a bug zapper to a bug. When a receiver is open and puts their hand up, you have to throw the football, and so he did. And Foster Moreau made a heck of a play on the football. When you go up there and you make a heck of a play like that, the big difference having a healthy Foster Moreau in this game, or at least for the most part, until he had to leave with the head injury, unfortunately. I'll have an update on that here in a little bit. But you end up being able to connect with the player that way. So I think that like those things are individual execution. Those things are good scheme, good system. And then I'll add on top of that the individual player impact. Let's go to the defensive side. Tyrann Mathieu forces a fumble and recovers that fumble. Him punching that football out is about the play that he made. It's not about how good or bad the Carolina Panthers are. That's a play that Tyrann Mathieu made. Will Harris getting that opening interception on the opening defensive drive where he had to run, get in position, and dive for a football. That's individual effort leading to a result. Now, was Bryce Young's throw a poor decision? Yes. But how many times have we seen opposing teams make a poor decision and the Saints not be able to be opportunistic and capitalize on it? That's where I think you get those. Then you have Alontae Taylor, who gets 3 sacks in this football game. And we heard Tyrann Mathieu and Alontae Taylor talk about how hard those sacks are to get when you're going 20 miles an hour, literally, in Alontae Taylor's case. And you're unblocked. You're happy, right? You're closing in, and you have a guy that can escape a bit when it comes to Bryce Young. How hard those sacks are to get. What did Alontae Taylor do? He finished the play 3 times. 3 times he finished the play. And there were some plays where we saw the Saints team's defense get to Bryce Young and not be able to finish the play. So that's what I mean by individual effort leading to impact. So for me, the Saints checked 3 boxes that I needed them to check. Do you have the right system? Gestures broadly. Yes, I think you do. Or at least it certainly looks like it at the moment. Did you have the players and the execution that you needed from those players as a unit? Yes, you absolutely did. Did you have the individual impact that led to, or the individual performances that led to impact plays? Yes, you also did. So for me, that's the ingredients that you need for the gumbo, right? Everything else has to be able to kind of just be added on top of that, or it's a side dish or whatever. But those were the things that the New Orleans Saints needed to get right, regardless of who was on the opposite side of them when it came to playing this game. So yes, it was the Carolina Panthers. Yes, the Carolina Panthers are not a good the Carolina Panthers are not a good football team. Yes, the Carolina Panthers are a rebuilding team and a young team that made some mistakes. But you know what the New Orleans Saints are? They're a team that beat the crap out of that team. And that's good. One of the things that we highlighted about the New Orleans Saints from last year is they were really, really good at beating the teams that were worse than them. They walked into this game as a team or up against a team that was worse than them. And what did they do? They beat that team. And so I like seeing that from New Orleans. Now, the next 2 weeks are going to be about proving it, confirming it, right? This was the proof of concept. Now you have to implement everything. And you're going to be implementing it against some top tier opponents. But here's the other piece. Win 2 games out of the first 5. 2 games. 2 games out of the first 5. You got 1 checked off here. You could probably get another one against Atlanta because they did not look great today, right? They lost, 18-10 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Womp womp. Sorry, Atlanta. You didn't have your team. Y'all didn't score 47 points. Couldn't be this team. But win 2 out of the first 5 games. That's it. That's all you need. 2 and 3 through the first 5. You can drop a game to Dallas. You could drop a game to Philly. You could drop a game to Kansas City. You'd love to see them steal one of those 3 games for sure. But win 2 of the first 5 games. And then you have a much easier schedule towards the back end outside of Christmas Eve up against the Green Bay Packers, depending upon how Jordan Love looks coming back from this MCL situation. And so with all that, you're in a really good position to actually control your own destiny potentially going into the postseason instead of waiting for another team to win you in. That's where I think everything changes for the New Orleans Saints. And hey, Carolina Panthers, they do have a pretty good defense as well. So there was some, or not a pretty good defense, but they have some really good players on their defense. I think there's stuff with their scheme that's a little wonky. But anyway, we don't have to get into all that. All right, coming up next, let's look at the New Orleans Saints defense because they balled out as well. So I want to take a deeper look into that. And then I want to take a look and give you some of the injury updates that I think will be interesting to you as well. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the place to grab your last minute tickets. A lot of people, I knew some people that use Game Time and bought some $11 tickets to watch a 47-point output by the New Orleans Saints. John Hendricks and I spent $9 to watch a grand slam on a big-time comeback victory for the Angels up against the A's during training camp. Game Time just keeps bringing the experiences. And now they also have their Game Time picks, which makes it even easier because they filter out all the fluff and then just give you their best deals right off the bat. That way you don't have to sort through thousands of tickets because they have a ton of tickets available for sporting events, for concerts, for theater, for comedy, and much more. So go and check them out today. It's Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKED on so that you can get, use the promo code Locked On NFL. My apologies. So that you can get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Download the app, create an account, and use that promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Game Time. What time is it? It's game time. Let's get it. Who Dat Nation? The New Orleans Saints absolutely running the Carolina Panthers off the field today. And it wasn't all about the offense. I thought the defense absolutely balled out today as well. So I want to break down a little bit of defense, and I want to give you some big injury updates as well, just in terms of like the latest that we have on these injuries. So we appreciate you very much for being here. We appreciate you as always for being here. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow morning where we're going to kind of dive in a little bit deeper, really get into some of the analytics, some of the things that we've seen, some of the play calling, some of the motion percentages, play action percentages and stuff like that. So if you're interested in the deeper dive, that'll be up tomorrow morning. But right now we're focused on kind of the bigger picture, which is that the New Orleans Saints offense looked way better than most of us expected it to look right off the bat. And I'll tell you what, the New Orleans Saints defense looked even better than its most recent output. Let me explain what I mean by that. So first of all, we should acknowledge that the Carolina Panthers walked away with 193 total yards, net total yards in this game, compared to New Orleans that had 379 over on the offensive side. And they had barely eclipsed. It was 74 yards by the end of the half. So really a lot of that stuff, you want to talk about empty yardage, the type of criticism that Derek Carr would typically get, that was the Carolina Panthers. Like a lot of those late yards were against reserves, in the situations where you're playing off and you're just kind of trying to stay healthy and not have too many injuries and things like that. So I thought the New Orleans Saints defense was absolutely outstanding. Saints defense only allowing 11 first downs in this one, including forcing Carolina to go 1 of 10 on third down. Alontae Taylor, phenomenal game, 3 sacks. Again, becomes the first New Orleans Saints defensive back to ever put that stat line up. You also had an interception from Jordan Howden on an overthrow by Bryce Young, an interception from Will Harris on an overthrow from Bryce Young. There's a little bit of a theme here. And then you also had the punch out and recovery from Tyrann Mathieu. This New Orleans Saints defense was all over the place. And there were 2 players that I saw in particular that immediately contributed to it with emotion, with verbal communication, with all of it. The first of which was Will Harris. Will Harris was probably my favorite player to watch on defense tonight outside of Alontae Taylor. Will Harris was constantly jawing. He was either jawing with Carolina Panthers players, like you've been waiting for a little while for the Saints to kind of find that person that brings in a little bit of that attitude like a CJ Gardner-Johnson did in the past. Will Harris brought it today. I don't know if he was just amped because it was the first game, but according to Alontae Taylor, I asked him that question. He said Will Harris always like that. And here's the other thing that Will Harris did. Constantly communicated. He mentioned that Alontae Taylor mentioned that sometimes Will Harris will communicate so much in practice and like over communicate information, which me, look, I'm a manager, right? Like I've worked as a manager throughout my lifetime, straighten the tie, all that kind of stuff. And over communicating is a good thing, but it can be annoying. And that's what Alontae Taylor described. He was like, in practice, it's so annoying. So annoying when Will Harris is like constantly like over communicating. Hey, Alontae, make sure you do this. Don't forget, I'm over here. I'm doing this. So you got to do this, all this stuff. But he said in the game, it was perfect. It was exactly what was needed because you have all this noise. And let me tell you something. I'm going to try not to get too sentimental for a moment because I want to stay on track with the defense. But please let me say this for a moment. I am from this city. I know this city. I love this city from the bottom of my heart. The fun that I saw everybody having today was awesome. That was incredible. Like, what an incredible atmosphere in the best stadium in the NFL, which has gotten now all these like new shindigs and all this other stuff and all these new upgrades and everything like that. But the fun that I watched my people have today, And by my people, I mean the people of New Orleans, Saints fans, the people of the Gulf Coast, whatever. Incredible. So much freaking fun. So thank you for, if you were here in attendance, thank you for giving me something to be super excited about today, because that was so cool to watch. They were playing Chopper style in the first half. They were doing a wave in the third quarter. There was a Who Dat chant in the third quarter. It was perfect. Everything about it was perfect. I'm from this city, and I loved what I saw today, because this display is what Saints fans deserved. And then Saints fans gave back to the team what it was that they deserved, which was a raucous house. So it was awesome. It was awesome. Okay, let me step away from my soapbox. I apologize, but I really wanted to say that for a moment, because that touched me. Like, that meant a lot to me. So it was really cool to see. But over on the defensive side, you saw like all of that communication that got kind of messed up for the Carolina Panthers, and the Saints kind of having to keep this, despite all that noise, having to keep their stuff together. And so Will Harris over communicating, hey, do this, do that. Hey, make sure you watch it out for this. I'm over here doing this, blah, blah, blah. That all worked. And so I loved seeing Will Harris in that role. The other person that I thought that brought it, and this should be no surprise to you at all, by the way, Will Harris, dog of the day. No, Alontae Taylor, dog of the day. Alontae Taylor's dog of the day. I got to give him that. 3 sacks as a DB. Like, what are we doing? It was incredible. Willie Gay Jr. Something about the Wills in today's game. Willie Gay Jr. was another one that just brought a lot of energy. He was dancing. He was hyping everybody up. He was dancing with the crowd. DeMario was too. It was just super cool to see all that. So I absolutely love all of that. So that's one of the things that I think, like, again, you can talk about how bad Carolina is, but these things aren't impacted by that, right? Like how well the team communicated, how well they hyped each other up, how much they like fed from the crowd, how loud the crowd was. That ain't got nothing to do with how bad Carolina is. That's got everything to do with this New Orleans Saints team was doing. Now, again, they have to prove it again and again and again as they move forward, right? It's not a one game season, but still really important. Chase Young, a pest, absolute pest throughout this game for Bryce Young. We saw the Cam Chikarl C package that I like, the NASCAR package of Cam Jordan and Brian Brzee on the inside with Carl Granderson and Chase Young on the outside. That worked to perfection on a couple of big plays. The Saints' third down defense was excellent. Eric McCoy said that Klint Kubiak's third down offensive play calling was chef's kiss. I would say the same thing about Dennis Allen's third down play calling. He was in his bag on third downs. It was great. It was really, really good stuff. So, it was awesome. This was such a great moment. This was such a great day. And please enjoy it. Leslie Lobontel relay. It's the third time I've said it, so you know I mean it. Please enjoy it. Please enjoy it. Let me give you a couple of injury things. I told you please enjoy it. Now I'm going to give you injury news, but some of it's good. Some of it's good. So Foster Moreau was seen in the locker room after the game. Typically a good sign, especially when it comes to a concussion. He will be in concussion protocol. Head coach Dennis Allen did confirm that after the game. Not a surprise, right? You have a concussion, you go into concussion protocol. That's the way that it works. But he did tell some people like he was fine and he looked good there and all that kind of stuff. It's scary. It's always scary when you see somebody have a moment like that to where they like hit their head and they get up and he looked like a boxer. You know what I mean? That like just caught the bad end of a right hook or something like that. But he looked good after the game. He had a heck of a game out here. Like having a healthy Foster Moreau was huge for this New Orleans Saints team. So I love seeing that. The other thing that I'll mention too is that we saw Willie Gay Jr. leave with an undisclosed injury. We don't know yet. It might have pertained to his back. He did have the back injury that kept him limited all week, so that'll be a big one to watch. Marshon Lattimore leaving with a hamstring injury. They said that they don't know the severity of it yet, but to a certain point, like when it comes to hamstrings, you're just kind of like, get off the field. Like, don't worry about it. The thing that was really, I don't want to say there's optimism because we don't really know, but the thing that maybe gives you like a little bit of optimism, like a little bit of a silver lining is all that this is that Marshon Lattimore didn't leave the injury tent and go to the locker room. He left and he stood on the sideline. So that's typically at least somewhat of a good sign, but I wouldn't be surprised if he misses next week or something like that. But look, that's what you got Kool-Aid McKinstry for. It's exactly what we talked about. The Saints are never going to be able to keep all three. No team is ever going to be able to keep all three of their starting defensive backs, cornerbacks in particular, on the field for 17 games. That's why you go and get you a Kool-Aid McKinstry. They've got a Kool-Aid McKinstry. So I think that'll be good. Somebody said Alontae Taylor is leading the NFL in sacks right now. Yes, that does not surprise me with 3 in this game. And then finally, Lucas Patrick had a toe injury. history of toe injuries with the New Orleans Saints, never particularly good. So we'll see exactly what happens there. Landon Young came in and took his place at left guard. I thought he played well there. So that'll be a big one to watch, though, here over the course of the next few days heading into that Dallas game, right? Like, you'd love to have all five of your starting offensive linemen up against Dallas for sure. And especially up against Philly after what we saw against Green Bay here this past week. So definitely something to watch out for there. All right. There's all your injury updates. What do the New Orleans Saints need to work on? Keeping their players on the field, penalties. That's it. That's what I got for you for today. Tomorrow, we're going to do a bigger deep dive. I might have some more things that maybe need some things that I might look at and say, hey, there's some growth areas for you, all that kind of stuff. But we'll worry about that tomorrow. For right now, enjoy this win. Have a ton of fun tonight. Be safe. I appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen of the day every day. If you're interested, you can go and check out for your second listen today, Locked On Pelicans, Locked On LSU. But I know you're partying. I know you're going to be busy. So just check them out for me tomorrow, okay? Make me that promise. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. Big shout out to Terry. Big shout out to Kevin. Big shout out to everybody that I saw today. Thank y'all very much for showing love. And of course, if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure that you find me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. It's Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.